summer, the Midwest weather people just are really bad at their jobs. Like really, really bad. I'm about to go out and try to ride all the stages of the Tour of Athens in one day. So yesterday I attempted to do the entire Giro of Athens social distancing. 7 stages. I did not do it. I did 6 of the 7. And there's some reasons why that happened. Mentally I cracked. Physically, I am wiped out today. So I think I was worse physically than I thought I was, but mentally I just cracked. What ended up happening is I had planned to stop for a really big lunch, but because of the weather, I didn't do that. And I think I needed that mental break and that to refuel a lot more. And then during stage 4, which is 6 of the 7, I got caught in a torrential downpour, and mentally I just was like, I just want to go home. And so what stinks even more, though, is I went home, stopped Strava, look at it real quick, 9 hours, 15 minutes, 143 something miles, point something. I swear I hit save. I went and took a shower, come back, there's no record of this ride on Strava. It's the longest ride I've done in a number of years. So I'm just frustrated it's not on there. Not only that, but Tuesday or Wednesday on July 1st, they're shutting down one of the roads on one of the stages, so I'm not going to be able to do that. The weather's not cooperating the next couple days, but I am tempted to go out and do it again. But right now, physically, I am just beat. It was not as physically as challenging as I thought, because I did it pretty slow and dosed my efforts pretty well. But yeah, mentally, it was tough. And then last night, physically, I was beat. Right now, physically and mentally, I'm beat. And the other thing is, I don't even know if I could ride on Tuesday. Like my nether regions are quite sore right now. Do not want to get on a saddle right now. Arm hurt a lot. It took a beating yesterday for sure. So yesterday I rode 9 hours and 15 minutes. Though it's not on Strava, I think it's funny that I'm upset that I did something and it's not recorded on my computer for the world to see, and somehow that bothers me. But anyways, when I was riding yesterday, there's a point where I started thinking, this may be the longest ride I've ever done. And then I started thinking about it more. It's like, no, probably not. I've had some other really epic rides, really long rides. And I started thinking about one of them, and it's a story that I've told a lot of times. And if you're friends with me, you've probably heard this story. So it's Jason's story time. So the story takes place in 1998. But in order to tell the story, I have to back up to 1997. 1997, I'm a sophomore in college, just like a punk kid, and just hating life, like really hating being in college, or just not knowing what I wanted to do. And I was considering dropping out of college. And I went and talked to my advisor, Larry Weinzimmer, who was awesome. I mean, I assume he still is awesome. But he had a really good conversation with me, and he didn't say don't drop out. He just said basically, here's some other options. Like, one thing you could do is take a semester off, and that way you don't have to reapply, when you want to come back, if you do want to come back. Another thing is our university had like an exchange, like a domestic exchange program. I could go a year somewhere else. Or he said, or you could study abroad. And I was like, yeah, that kind of sounds cool. Like, study abroad sounds like something I might be into. So I go to the study abroad office, and they're like, do you want to study abroad? What language do you speak? And I'm like, English. And they're like, okay, you can go to like one of these cities. And I hated the Midwest winters. And I remember it was during the winter when I was making this decision. And I was like, wherever's the furthest south I can go and still go to an English speaking school, that's where I'm going to go. You know, it's something like you could go to like the Arctic, the subarctic, Denmark, or Italy. So I ended up going to Florence, Italy. So in the summer of 1997, I started racing bikes. I mean, I'd done one bike race when I was a little kid, but I started racing bikes in the summer of 1997. So then in the January of 1998, I'm going to Florence, Italy. And so this is awesome for me, right? So here I am, just getting into cycling, going to one of the meccas, a hotbed of the cycling world. So I took my bike, and it was a great experience overall. A different experience, I think, than most probably college kids when they go study abroad, because even though, you know, I would interact with my classmates, there's a lot of like, hey, I'm going to go home and go to bed early because tomorrow morning I'm going to go out and ride, you know, and I mean, just like crazy stories, one of which I'm about to tell. So it's a little backstory. So I'm getting ready to go to Italy, and I got my passport, and they say, hey, when you get there, you need to get this thing called the Permesso di Soggiorno. So then, much like now with the EU and the US currently, back then Italy, there's no EU then, they had, basically you could go over there with just your passport. You didn't need an extra visa for 90 days. But if you were staying longer than 90 days, you had to get this thing called the Permesso di Soggiorno. And it was no problem because I was a student. All I had to do was say, here's my student ID. I'm studying here for this long. Okay, that's fine, right? But I had to go to this building. Now, what they told me in the US was, if you don't do that, what you need to do is you need to leave the country at some point, get your passport stamped, and then come back in. And then as long as you do that, then you can avoid having to get that thing, right? So I had decided, like, my first week there, like, okay, I'm going to go try to get this Permesso di Soggiorno. So I go to the building where you have to get it. And I go like in the morning, like 9 o'clock in the morning, and the line is already like wrapped all the way around the building. This building took up like a whole city block. And so, I mean, just crazy. And I was just like, all right, I'm not going to do that. Lo and behold, the winters in Tuscany are not all that great. It rains a lot. It's not all that warm. Nicer than Peoria, Illinois. It was still pretty rough. But fast forward a couple months. As the spring started coming, you know, I would ride more and more, and I had some great adventures. Like I said, I did some races over there. And twice I rode to Siena and back. And I'm going to tell the story about something that happened to me on the first time I decided to ride to Siena. So if you look on a map, Florence to Siena is about 73, 75 kilometers, something like that. So it's 150 kilometers, which is something like, I don't know, 90 something miles, right? That's totally doable. Well, I just looked that up on MapQuest, and that's like on the interstate, okay? So first of all, the way I got around in 1998 was not with a phone, not with GPS, not with anything. I had a fold-out like paper map. And I have a copy of that map. I don't know how I have a copy of it, but I don't have the original one. I wish I did, because I took like a marker everywhere I went on my bike. So anyways, my point is there was like, you know, you're not taking the most direct route there, okay? The other thing is, like, this is like the Tuscany hillside, right? And these hills are like kind of like what we have around here, maybe more like Hocking Hills type thing, but like a lot of it. But I mean, it's just not flat. Okay, it's a lot of climbing, not like super steep, but it's just a lot of undulation, like nonstop going up and down. So it's not an easy ride. Okay, so people talk about how like beautiful Siena is, and I'm always like, I don't know what Siena looks like. Like both times I went there, I was like just worn out and saw like the sign. One time I went to the center and like just turned around and rode home. So I'm riding home from this first time, riding uphill, and I'm on a road where obviously this is like a busy road. There's a shoulder. Cars are going by super fast. Obviously, it's not super safe, but like I didn't see any evidence that this was like, you know, an autostrada, as it's called. So all of a sudden, these policemen pull up next to me. Okay, and these were not the policemen actually. The one that starts with a C. These are basically like the military police. Okay, there's like local police, and then there's like these dudes, right? And they're a little bit more intimidating looking. Okay, so they pull up next to me. One guy's driving, and the passenger is like rolls down his window and starts yelling at me in Italian, and I'm like I knew like zero Italian. Like I didn't know any before I went there. I started taking classes probably 2 months after I'm there, so I knew enough to say I don't speak Italian. No parlo italiano. No parlo italiano. The guy keeps talking, and I'm like, no parlo italiano. So he tells me to pull over. Okay, so I pull over. And the guy gets out of the car and starts talking to me, again in Italian. I'm like, no parlo italiano, inglese. And he's like, francese? And I'm like, no, inglese. He goes, questa strada, okay, this street, knew that, non bici, okay? Something to that effect, okay, that's what I remember. This street, no bicycle. And I go, scusa, scusa. And he goes, no scusa. Like very sternly, and I remember he wagged his finger in my face, and I was like, oh. And then he says, like, perfect James Bond villain, your documents. So what I had with me was a photocopy of my student ID and a photocopy of my passport, but I did not have my permesso di soggiorno. Okay, so I hand him my documents, right, and he motions for me to get in the back of the car. And I'm like, Mia bici. And he goes to the trunk and like opens up the trunk. And this trunk is filled with this is the way I would equate it. Like if you go camping, like when you go and you leave to camp, everything's like nice and organized. When you get home, you open up that trunk, it's just like camping crap everywhere. That's what it's like, except it was like policeman crap like everywhere. I specifically remember like roadsides and cones, right? And so that wasn't gonna work. Okay, so basically they motioned for me to get back on the road, and then they're going to follow me. But they still have my documents in their car, so I can't go anywhere, right? But they're just following me. Now remember, I'm like, I don't know, 90 miles, 70 miles into this ride, going uphill, absolutely exhausted, and going as fast, as hard as I can. And eventually they get like frustrated and come up and tell me to pull over again. So I pull over again. We go through the same thing where he tells me to get in the back seat. And I'm like, Mia bici. And so this time they have another solution, which is they roll down my window. I'm sitting behind the passenger. They roll down my window. The passenger rolled down his window. And I held the seat post. The passenger cop held the handlebars and out the window, and we drove down the interstate with my bike outside the car like that. And I remember two very specific thoughts. Number one, I remember looking down, and underneath the seat, like right next to me, there was an Uzi. Like no joke, like full on just Uzi, right? The second thing I remember is looking at my documents on the dashboard and thinking, I don't have the permesso di soggiorno. And this story is going to be hilarious when I get back to town and tell my fellow students if I don't end up getting deported. So what ends up happening is we get off at the next exit, and at this point, like I'm pretty much like shaking, like we're like pretty sure I'm going to get in trouble. Like I don't know, I was like 20 years old, like in a foreign country without the proper documents, right? Like I thought for sure something bad was going to happen. So we pull off, we get off the exit, I get out of the car, they hand me my documents, and he goes, "Questa strada." Firenze. He just points. It was like this road to Florence. So that's my story. Hope you enjoy it. Then I had lunch. So I did it. I finished all the stages of the Giro, the Tour of Athens social distancing. I did them all in one day. It took me just over 10 hours total, something like 165 miles. I think that might be the longest ride I've ever done. I have no plans on doing it again. I wanted to see if I could do it. I did it. Closed the books. I'm not as tired today as I was on Saturday after my first attempt. That being said, last night my body was way more messed up. And I think it's because I took 400 extra milligrams of ibuprofen, and that kind of messed with my stomach, I think. Last night I was fine on the bike, and I think I ingested more caffeine along the way. I drank a lot of Coke yesterday. Coke is one of my guilty pleasures on the bike, and it's a great fuel. I think I had like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 Cokes yesterday, which is unusual. I normally just don't drink regular Coke. And then I fueled on power bars. I think I had like 3 or 4 servings of Endurox, like in my bottles. Pretty much every third bottle I was drinking Endurox. I drank a ton of low sugar Gatorade, Powerade, all that stuff with the low sugar content. But just to get electrolytes and yeah, it was hot yesterday, so I just made sure I fueled, drank a lot. And then I did take my lunch break yesterday, so I took only about a half hour, 45 minutes maybe. I was a little bit ahead of schedule. So I actually came home, took a shower real quick, like a cold shower in the middle. My feet were hurting, cold shower, kind of getting out of the shoes and getting out of my socks and kind of like getting some cold water on them. I had made pasta the day before, so I had some pasta. And it wasn't a lot. It was like 60 grams of pasta, like 250, 300 calories. But it was good to have like that substance. And then to top it all off, I just put a little cherry on the top. I finished up Cable Lane, which is not the easiest way to get back to my house. I have to go up a hill no matter what. But it's the shortest way. And at that point, I was so tired and I was like just exhausted. And I was like, you know what? It's going to hurt no matter which way I go up. I might as well go up the way that's the shortest. Yeah, so felt pretty good. Almost 10,000 feet of climbing. And then today I went out and did yard work and I got bit by something. I don't know. Itches. Pretty bad actually. And like tore up my hand blisters. All right, that's it.